It's really great to be with y'all. Truly. My name is Maurice Mitchell. I'm the National Director of the Working Families Party. I feel home. I feel like am I home? Yeah. I average 10 flights a month, but there's something special about being in New York. I'm a product of New York. I was born on Long Island, actually. Yeah, give it up. All right, Long Island, yeah, yeah. And I know some folks might have heard a little bit before, but I don't assume that anybody knows my biography. So indulge me because we'll share about issues and everything else, but I'd like to share a little bit about myself. Is that all right? So raise your hand if you're an organizer. We got a lot of organizers in the building. Well, like many of you, I'm a longtime organizer, and even as the head of a political party, I still consider myself an organizer first. And I believe that the first duty of an organizer is to tell the truth. And yeah, let's give it up for the truth. and that's, I mean, in this day and age, we got to give it up for the truth. You know what I'm saying? Like when we see it fleetingly, oh, there it is. I remember that thing. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to tell the truth about where I come from, the truth about this moment that we're in, and the truth about what I believe we all can build together. And so my story, like I said, technically begins in Long Island, New York, but my roots, like many of y'all, begin in rural country. My parents are rural people. I love bringing them into the room because they are the archetype of the folks we so often need to organize and are often ignored. Rural folks, those are my parents. Immigrants, my parents are immigrants. Black folks, union members, the list of identities and intersections go on and on. So I keep them close to my chest as I navigate the world of politics and organizing. I'm sure there's people in your life that you keep close to your chest as you navigate this life, right? Yeah. For me, it's my parents and my grandparents. And I grew up in the suburbs. Like I said, I grew up in Long Island, but I'm actually an outlier in my family because my siblings and I grew up in the suburbs. But every generation of the people on both sides of my family tree have rural roots. My mom was born and raised in rural South Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, TNT. My dad was born and raised in Grenada. Tiny island nation. Okay, pick it up. Yeah, all right, see some heads. Yeah. Spice Isle. His parents were rural people. Her parents were rural people. And on and on and on and on. Generation after generation until slavery. And I don't know where my ancestors were doing on the continent of Africa, likely in West Africa, but I bet a few dollars that they were rural people as well. And I don't have to explain, because some people I think know, but Long Island is a complicated place. And it's a place of contradictions. It's a place of diversity. Long Island is this hybrid place of urban, suburban, and rural. Some people understand Long Island to be the Hamptons. But it's a place where you could organize Central American migrants. You could organize Black folks who migrated from the South. You could organize against the most wealthy people on the planet, right? All in the same zip code. That's Long Island, the complexities and the contradictions of life in America. And having navigating that complexity of Long Island, I feel like I've learned some deep lessons about organizing and coalition building. Can I share them with you? So, some really humbling organizing experiences took place here in New York on Long Island as I organized in the small organization called Long Island Progressive Coalition for years and years, which is part of the Citizen Action Network. And I mentioned that my first duty as an organizer is to tell the truth. And the truth, one of the first truths I learned in this work is that this work is really challenging. It's really hard. It's not glamorous. You know, I was raised in a organizing a moment in organizing where there wasn't social media. There was no way to be an organizer and have anybody ever know who you were, ever, right? So signing up to be an organizer was signing up to be anonymous, right? Which is still the case for most organizers. The anonymous, really, really hard work. And I'm not even talking about the long hours or the often low pay that organizers earn, the lack of recognition for your work, like I said, or any of the other common frustrations people point to. One of the hardest jobs, one of the hardest roles of an organizer is actually the work of convincing people of their own power and convincing people that it's worth taking risks to be in connection with others. I came into this work as an idealist, and I'm still very much an idealist, but in my 4th decade on this planet, I'm also a realist as well. And I came into this work, and I suspect many of you came into this work as well, believing all we needed to do was stand on the right side of history. And through our righteousness alone, the choice would be clear where to stand. It would just be evident to everybody that if we simply brought the message to the people, they would see the things clearly our way, right? Oh, how wrong I was. When I was younger, one of my first organizing campaigns was on Long Island trying to stop a power plant from coming into a community. To me, in all of my youthful exuberance and idealism, if I knocked on enough doors, rationally explained our position, we'd win folks over to our side. Y'all, in my mind, this was a slam dunk. The opposition was speaking the usual corporate language of tax breaks that wouldn't benefit the community and jobs that people in the community wouldn't have. This was such a 2020 clear case of environmental racism and environmental justice. I grabbed my clipboard and my lit and I set out to change the small corner of the world. And as I started knocking on doors, it just turned out that there were a lot of people that simply didn't want to hear it. These weren't monsters. They weren't Bond-level villains. These were our folks. These were working people in a lot of cases, trying to make it through the world the best they could through the contradictions. There were a lot of people who believed the corporate spin, that this power plant would bring prosperity to the community. We built the campaign and we did all the things that you'd expect from a serious campaign. We built momentum, we built a coalition, and we lost. We didn't lose because our messaging was bad necessarily. It wasn't. We didn't lose because our messengers didn't look like the community and in some cases come from the community. They were there. We ultimately lost, and some of the people that we started with switched sides. We lost because the corporate polluter turned into community hero by offering the church group a bus, offering the youth group some t-shirts, offering the community group some trips. It was deep-pocketed, nefarious, but relational organizing. And it provided material benefit to folks who were under-resourced, and it was persuasive. That was an organizing lesson for me. It was ultimately a sobering reminder of how much power we need to build, even when it seems like the issues are on our side. And as a young black organizer trying to knock on these doors in the multiracial suburbs of rural and suburban Long Island, the work was humbling. And it wasn't that the people were necessarily mean to me or wrong, but in a lot of cases, I couldn't get a word in to actually talk about the contradictions and the issues. As a baby organizer, it was a very sobering experience, but that loss would steel my spine for the fights to come. And it was a reminder that I could take a lot of rejection. It was a reminder that the contradictions live everywhere, that the challenges live everywhere, not just in Bond-level villains at corporate C streets, but the contradictions live in our communities, in our homes, in our bodies, in ourselves. I often say, take heart when others don't agree with you, because you don't agree with you, right? Like, I have this really intense fitness regimen that I'm developing, right? Where like, all right, Like I wake up and I'm often at hotel gyms, and I woke up today knowing that I was supposed to go to the gym, telling myself you should go to the gym. Did I go to the gym? I didn't go to the gym. If I can't agree with myself, perhaps I could have some compassion for the folks that often disagree with me on issues of importance. Does that make sense? I want to pause here because in 2024, an early 20s me may have gotten caught up in the echo chamber. That echo chamber didn't exist when I was in my 20s, right? The social media echo chamber. It exists now. Because with social media, it's easy to get caught up talking only to folks who we agree with, to be in 100% community with people who see the world exactly the way we do. Whether we are from rural communities or urban communities, with a couple of clicks, we can have our worldviews affirmed, to be led down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theory. But it can be very easy to mistake our world, virtual or otherwise, for the world. And before we know it, likes and hearts and thumbs ups become our version of the work. I say this as someone, I say this as someone who has been forced by my staff to be more active on social media. I'm faced by those contradictions. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. And actually, because people on staff would kill me if I didn't do this. Speaking of it, here are the contradictions right before you. If you want to stay connected, truly, we got to organize where people are at. I begrudgingly accept that people live on their phones, that many people who I want to be able to engage have developed an addiction to the social media apps where, I actually fell into this addiction. I broke it, where the first thing you do is consult the social media apps. How many people know what I'm talking about? You wake up and you're like, I don't even know I'm doing this, but let me get my dopamine rush. How many, right? All right, so we're trying to interrupt that. So if you take out your phone, so take a pen, right? The number is 30403. If you text to that number, right, the number 3, you can take your phones out right now. Take your phone. I'm an organizer, so I'm about action, immediate action. Please, humbly, take your phones out. And go into the little text box, text to the phone number 30403. And I promise you this, you're not going to get inundated with random texts, with breathless, it's the end of the world, give us $5. Text my name, which is Mo, M-O-E, to 30403. So text Mo to 30403. And that will enable me to be in a relationship with you. You could find me on social media. You could actually text me back. We're trying to leverage technology for the good and to build connections and relationships. All right. The staff is happy. I've done my job. Okay. So I do recognize the irony in that. But again, we have to leverage the tools that we have at our disposal to stay connected. But when it comes to organizing and building power, it's important to remember 2 things. First, we have to touch grass. We have to be outside. We have to be in relationship with people. We have to meet people where they're at. Whether that's on the doors, in the grocery store, at public parks, or yes, on TikTok. And second, governing is the prize. That's what brought me to Working Families Party. We are building power and building coalitions so that we can be the decision makers. Going viral isn't the prize on Elon Musk's device and platform, right? Elections aren't even the prize, even though everybody's talking about elections and I run a political party. Governing is the prize, right? And that word governing is deep. It means to me how we show up for one another and how we're involved in the decisions that are the most important and most intimate in our lives. And we should never cede governing power to anybody. any corporation, any movement. It's the most intimate thing possible, which is why the lie that governing power is somehow evil is designed for people without means to let go of governing power so that people with means can dictate those decisions on your life. And when we bring people along, bring people into governing, some magic happens. I remember another campaign. Is there a timekeeper here? I want to honor my time commitment. You'll pull me off. Sandman Sims will come through. Yeah, you have to be of a certain age to get that reference. But all right. I remember another campaign I helped organize to prevent the expansion of the Suffolk County Jail. I want to give a quick spoiler alert. All of these stories aren't as sad as the power plant story, okay? So in Suffolk County, there was an effort to double the size of the county jail to the tune of $500 million. And in a nation where it's common to spend more money on incarceration than education, the odds that this effort would be successful, I'd say, were pretty good. But in jail, people in jail, as we know, are often forgotten. And a lot of people in the communities often view people in jail as deserving whatever comes to them. The incarcerated, their families, and those that love them aren't a typical power center in politics. So we had our work cut out for us. Agreed? But when we sat down to brainstorm, we realized that we could assemble a mighty diverse coalition in opposition to this expansion, a multiracial coalition, because a lot of people get caught up in the criminal justice system, and a lot of those people have people who love them outside of the system. Those were a lot of folks who had family members currently in jail, an extended family, and grassroots organizers and organizations. They understood acutely that a jail expansion meant creating more beds, and more beds meant those beds had to be filled. The market demands that those beds get filled with people that looked like those in their families. And we even got conservatives on board. I want to say that again. We got conservatives on board. Folks who are usually on the side of all things law and order. Were convinced to oppose a prison and jail expansion. They were not swayed by the human element as much as they were swayed by the price tag. I said $500 million. We didn't lead with the evils of mass incarceration when trying to organize the conservatives, and it's highly likely that if we led with the moral argument, they would have opposed us outright. It turns out that these fiscal conservatives were outraged by the harm to their pocketbooks, whether the historical harm on our people mattered to them. But listen, we'll take alignment and coalition, because once you're in the door, however you get in the door, you could build connection. You could be in conversation. We met people where they were at, and we won. That jail never got built. That was in the mid-2000s. Now, there's thousands and thousands of working class people of color and working class people of all races that will have not been shuttled through that jail because of the uncommon coalitions that we were willing to make. The law and order types may be principally opposed to just about everything else the quote-unquote other side of our coalition cares about, but on this issue, this victory created tangible changes in the lives of the people who would have eventually occupied those beds. This is an untold number of people who won't be impacted by the justice system. And at its core, our organizing can be thought of in two ways, one technical and one relational. Whether that's building power in urban communities, rural communities, or bringing the two together to realize a shared goal, we can break this down. It's important for us to get back to the basis of community building. Now, I shared that because the distance between me politically and conservatives is so vast. But in our own organizing spaces, in our own homes, we got bridging to do as well. Am I right? Organizing is a GPS. We can be walking, driving, taking public transportation. The GPS helps us get to our destination. That's what we are. in some ways as organizers. All of us manage to find our way here from different places. All of us here. We have to be the power-building GPS. When we flipped the state Senate in New York State from red to blue, or ran the Independent Democratic Caucus, a breakaway caucus that sided with organized capital in New York, some people know this story, or stopped the Suffolk County prison expansion, we had to get people to the same destination that were traveling from different places, ideologically, culturally, and otherwise. It's a game of time and distance. If you're traveling and making a wrong turn, what does the GPS do? Right? What does it do? Yeah, exactly. It reroutes us. It corrects us. It doesn't yell at us. We aren't scolded by the app. The app doesn't crash. It doesn't tell us to go home. It simply gets us back on course and recalculates the time and distance to get to our destination. The app is actually very kind to us. We also have to be like that. We can't shout at our people in coalition when they make a turn that we disagree with. We have to compassionately and thoughtfully get them back on course to the destination. We don't consider this, but the GPS is, again, very compassionate. No matter how many times we make the wrong turn, it keeps the same tone. We don't give it its due in some ways. A key point of that compassion and empathy is being okay with diversity. And I'm not simply talking about cosmetic diversity, though mixing it up is great. I'm also talking about being okay with diversity of thought, finding consensus with people who aren't already where we want them to be, and being comfortable with the discomfort that comes with bringing people along. At our core, our job is to get to 50% plus one. Our job is to get to a majority. Our job ultimately is addition and multiplication. People who think our job is division and subtraction have lost the plot. There is a false comfort that ferments when we are only in community with people who agree with us. It is an incredibly unhelpful, privileged position to sit in. And that brings me to my second point. This is relational. We don't add to our movement if we're only in relationship with people who already currently agree with us. And the only way we could be an authentic relationship with somebody that we don't already agree with is to have a give and take. We actually have to be willing to be transformed by that relationship. We can't knock on doors and invite people to our meetings if we're looking for one-way transformation. Our job is to connect first and foremost and actually transform secondly. And we cannot accept the premise that the condition we find someone in is the condition they'll stay in. This doesn't apply to 100% of the population. Some folks, no matter how hard we try, no matter how much we connect, will be opposed to us, sure. But the good news is that we don't have to get to 100%. We have to get to 50% plus one, a majority of the people. So when we leave room for connection, when we leave room for transformation, we increase our odds of getting to 50% plus one. And we also increase our odds that we might be transformed as well through the work. I'm going to need a little bit more time. Thank you. And that we might be transformed as well through the work. I want you to understand that philosophically, which means I'm not standing here being right and righteous, and my job is to convert everyone else. My job is to be transformed and to create a space for transformation through the work. That is organizing. Addition and multiplication has to be our approach. We don't have the privilege of subtraction and division. But you know who does? The corporations, big pharma, big agriculture, big tech, big real estate, big everything that we're fighting against. Big water. Could you believe that they actually sell bottled water that they pump out of our communal aquifers for free, bottle it in plastic, sell it back to us? It's outrageous. That should be against the law. corporations have a different setup. They have a different goal, a different mandate. They actually benefit from subtraction, from hyper-segmentation. And that's why their interests rely on keeping us siloed, keeping us divided. Progressives, moderates, conservatives, silo, silo, silo. Rural versus urban versus suburban. White versus black versus Latino versus native, and on and on and on and on. If the left, quote unquote left, center, and right, everyday working people who see themselves as left, center, and right, actually aligned around the fact that the corporations were fleecing us all, or aligned around, let's say, basic food policy, because we all need to eat, whether we're left, right, or center, or aligned around a baseline idea that nobody, regardless of their ability to work or their age, should ever go hungry? What if we aligned around the idea that no child in a country that is the wealthiest nation in the history of nations should ever go to bed with an empty stomach? I'm not saying it would be easy. It would be hard. But isn't that worth struggling across difference? Staying in relationship with somebody who identifies as a conservative or as an independent or as a whatever, demanding that you struggle together to make sure that that child eats? Isn't that worth the sacrifice? That's organizing. And then hopefully through that work, you and them are forever transformed. Does that make sense? Okay. We know that there are people amongst us fighting anti-poverty policy out here. We know that. And we know that they're fighting anti-poverty policy based on the idea that even though their children might get fed, that perhaps that policy might lead to an immigrant's child being fed or a black person's child being fed, which is why the lie of white supremacy has to be broken if we ever want all of our people being fed. Division robs all of us of our birthright, which is the commons and the democracy that we all fight for. And when I say democracy, I'm not talking about the Electoral College. I'm not talking about the ability to vote every year or all the, I'm talking about the democracy is our people and what we do with each other. And that's worth fighting for. Solidarity is how we fight division. Solidarity could lead us to our birthright. We take on these big challenges that are calling us, that are demanding resolution through solidarity. The corporate politics of subtraction and division want to see those of us that are starting in different places as perennially at odds. It is our job to guide and build the relationships that facilitate transformation, like that GPS. We all are starting in different places. How can we be the GPS that allows us all to be at the same hotel ballroom at the same time? I was asked last week about whether someone from the right side of the ideological spectrum transformed me. And the answer to that question was yes. It's my last story. Timekeeper, thank you. I was recently brought into a room to talk with a white, Southern evangelical pastor. And y'all don't really know about my full history and about my history and movement, but you will understand what a deep contrast that is. If you looked at how we showed up physically, you could easily be led to believe that the movements we're a part of have nothing in common to do with one another. And I walked in with an open mind, and I actually found myself transformed by this white Christian evangelical man. I sat there listening to this white Southern evangelical pastor talk about the separation of church and state, something I fundamentally believe in. But the difference was our GPS. The difference was where we started. Our starting point to get to the same destination. His why was an evangelical argument for challenging white Christian nationalism that I'd not even thought about. I always used to think about the separation of church and state as designed to protect the people or the state from religious tyranny and dogmatism. He thinks about the separation as necessary to protect the church from the influence of politics and state power. Because just as white Christian nationalism has had a corrupting force on the state, it has also had a corrupting force on Christianity. In that moment, two people from very different perspectives on a host of things arrived at the same destination. We are in alignment there. So there's a secular pro-democracy case and a theological case against white Christian nationalism and for democracy. He believed in a lot of other conservative ideas that I strongly disagree with. But when it comes to fighting white Christian nationalism that threatens to hijack our government and directly threatens black folks like myself and my 8-year-old, we actually have something that we could fight against together. And I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish about it. It's not like we go back and forth and chat and kiki on our phones. But I know how to reach that man. And I know what work I can do with him. And we built a relationship and mutual respect, not just based blanketly on all the things we agree with, mutual respect that also says we respect the fact that we disagree on a lot of other things. I'm glad that I had that conversation, because if I was allergic to being in relationship with people who are different, it wouldn't have happened. It would have been so easy for me to look at that older white evangelical man who proudly identified as a white Christian evangelical and assumed we were in opposition. And on most days, I probably would have been right. But on that day, I wasn't. If I don't extend curiosity, compassion, and a listening ear, then I would be robbed, and I would have been robbed that day, of the transformation that happened between both of us, an opportunity to build a bigger we. So I asked the question, what could we here in this ballroom do together? And I don't solely mean what can we win together? What kind of joy-filled, connective movements can we build together? What keeps me here? Here being Farm Aid, here being the Working Families Party where Jasmine Gripper leads our New York chapter. Give it up for Jasmine right there. If you're interested in anything we're building, if you believe in the crazy idea that the people should govern in any democracy, not corporations, then see Jasmine. Do you believe in that idea? What keeps me here in the fight is not certain victory. I must tell people the truth. And the truth is we are not assured victory. And we are never assured victory. We organize our forces towards that path, as slim as it may be, grounded in our convictions and a sober assessment of the conditions that lay before us. In doing so, we are clear-eyed about the fact that despite our best efforts, there will be some victories and there will be some losses. But the point of the bigger we is not to catalog the wins or the losses. The reason to link arms and struggle together is not to earn an assured victory. The reason for the we is the we itself, because communities can weather anything, and communities can hold anything. The greatest tragedies and the most epic victories, when we lose, I get to be comforted by the people we built coalitions with. And in turn, I get to comfort those around me. When we win, we celebrate together. That is the beautiful and transformative experience of a life committed to justice and committed to collective action. It's choosing to be on the right side of history and choosing to be in this fight with all of you. That is the point. We get to set big goals and North Stars together and fight for that generational change. I don't want us to get fixated on winning or losing, because that's how we lose the plot. I remember in 2008, I'm involved in electoral organizing. In 2008 and 2012, Barack Obama, he won big elections, But the Democrats, his party, they lost 1,000 legislative seats down ballot in both those elections. So when you get caught up in the wins, you lose the plot. This is a long, up and down ballot, generational fight for our culture, for connection, for meaning, for belonging. And I'm honored to be here in front of you and in this fight with you, because the work we do together matters. What we do, and this is a lie of the corporations, they want us to believe that our efforts actually don't matter, that our role is to simply be spectators or consumers, that our job is to simply accept the conditions as they are. I'm here to tell you that that's a lie, that what you do matters. What you do actually matters. And I think there's 45 days until the election. And over those next 45 days, for those of you that are involved in electoral work, what you do really matters. And what we do over the next 5 and 10 and 20 years matters. So, my friends, consider this a call to action, a call to be the GPS and the relationship builders that we need right now in your communities, in your families, in your workplaces, in your homes. This is our time. This is the people's time. As the artifice of elite perfection crumbles, as the people that we were told had everything figured out in organized capital drive us to one crisis after another, I'm actually excited because it exposes the reality that we've always known. Nobody's going to save us but us. And there's no wizard behind the veil that is somehow working all their magic. All those people that we've given power to have driven us into crisis. So we have to go back to the dirt. We have to go back to the earth. We have to go back to our relationships and the intelligence and genius of our communities. So this is a call. This is a call to the genius of community, to the genius of connection. I want you to know, I want you to understand that for everybody that's willing to take this call and to take action and to be that GPS, if you can, and if you're able, because I want us all to see this collectively, I want you to stand. And if you can't stand for whatever reason physically, then express the fact that you want to be that GPS. We represent so many people outside of this room. Don't allow the corporations or the haters or the white Christian nationalists, or all the people who think that this room shouldn't happen. Let's make liars out of them. Let's make liars out of them by insisting, because I see a lot of difference in this room. And can we choose, when we see difference, to see a site of curiosity instead of a site of conflict? Can I say, hey, you look a little bit different. Tell me a story. I don't wear bolo ties. Tell me about that. Right? That's our choice. We could either see that difference as a natural site of conflict or as a site of curiosity. Imagine what we could do with the difference in this room, the power in the relationships here. Do you feel that? Do you feel the difference when we're not just individuals having our individual feelings, but we're actually connected? We're actually networked? The lie of social media is that we certainly are the most networked that we've ever been in the history of people, but also the most disconnected. Do you feel the connection here? This is what the corporations fear. This is what the haters fear. They believe that it's an impossibility for white rural folks and recent immigrants from Central America and black folks that built this country through stolen labor could come together and decide to transform the conditions of our lives together. If you remain standing, stay standing, but now I need to hear you. Maybe you stomp your feet. Maybe you snap your fingers. Maybe you clap your hands. If you believe in that connection, I don't hear you. Do something. I need you right now. I need you right now. If you believe in the power of the people, I need you right now to clap your hands. If you believe that every person's birthright is quality water, I need you right now. If you believe we could be the stewards of the land, I need you to clap your fingers and not the corporations. If you love the people, do you love the people? Do you love the people? Do you love the people? If you want to build a bigger we, I need to hear you. I need to hear you, Farm Aid. If we could do that, we could be the GPS and the relation builders that we need to build that winning coalition. We could build that bigger we. And Farm Aid, that is how we all get free. Thank you so much.